Hello, Michael. Thank you for calling me.
Are you there?
Yes, I am there. Can you hear me? Is my
Good.
microphone on?
Yeah, I can
Okay.
hear you.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Roger, Roger. All right. Good thing our power outages that we both had at our ends ended in time for the interview. Always make sure I ask my guardian angels and spirit guides to make sure that if there's a thunderstorm, that it never ever goes that turns the power out whenever I'm about to do my interview. So it's great to be speaking to you. I did watch those videos that you suggested I watch last night. I was most impressed with what I saw. I like the idea, love the idea for solutions. So to kickstart this interview, well, I mean, if there's anything you want to say to start off, by all means do that first. But as far as subjects go, I think the first thing to do would be to talk about Ubuntu in general and what it seeks to accomplish from a standpoint of solutions and how it seeks to accomplish that to help humanity
Go,
in all
Andrew.
the ways.
Andrew, just go for it. Just
Okay.
go for it. Just record and go for it because I'm gonna start having time constraints after 4:30 my time. I've got people arriving from Johannesburg and they've driven all day to get to me, and I've got to give them attention.
Okay. So you got the floor. Why don't you tell us all about what Ubuntu is and what it seeks to accomplish and how it seeks to accomplish that?
Well, Ubuntu is first of all, it's an ancient African philosophy. The word itself, Ubuntu, specifically in southern Africa, below the equator. It's well known by the African people, and it, in essence, means unity within community, living together, sharing, caring for each other. The most commonly used definition for the word Ubuntu is I am who I am because of who we all are. It is a system of, as I said, sharing and caring for each other that has pretty much been beaten out of the people, not just here in Southern Africa, but all over the world. It is a system that was shared by ancient civilizations all over the world. They called it different names, but it was the same thing where communities and tribes of people lived together, looking after each other and utilizing each other's individual skills for the benefit of the community. And so this is a system that, as I said, is well known by the African people, and well, the term is well coined by politicians all the time if they want to earn brownie points. And in campaigns and election campaigns, they use the word Ubuntu. Even the ex USA president, I've already forgotten his name, Obama, used used the word Ubuntu to earn brownie points when he was here in South Africa, Nelson Mandela's funeral. So the word I used this word to create this movement, um, because it is a well understood principle and philosophy. But at the same time, we can't um, we can't imagine that we're going to create that kind of social structure with the same kind of energetic connections in this crazy world we find ourselves in today. So in around 2005 and 2006, when I first started writing and talking openly about a society free of money, I started coining a phrase called contributionism, which is the closest I could come to as a modern day definition for the word Ubuntu. And so was born the Ubuntu movement with the philosophy of contributionism as its foundation principle. And that's where we are today, 12 years later, since 2005, and a movement that's grown into more than 200 countries with supporters and followers and people that resonate with our simple philosophy and a plan of action and moving, providing solutions. Firstly, highlighting the problems, highlighting and teaching and sharing knowledge and information with people, information that they did not have about the origins of money, about the banking system, about how the banks and the corporations control our governments and how they impose presidents and leaders and prime ministers and how they remove them. A very simple system of control that's been imposed on humanity. So sharing the facts and the real history behind money, its origins some 6,000 years ago, and how it's evolved into what it is today, still controlled by the same people that originally created it as a tool of enslavement. And now providing solutions. Once we know what the problem is, where it comes from, we then very clearly know what we should and should not be doing into the future. So that's what the Ubuntu movement has done. We've evolved and grown and learned from our mistakes and our initiatives, from trying to create intentional communities to community projects to trying to build sustainable communities and all this kind of stuff and activities we've been involved in for many years now, learning from those experiences, getting involved in politics in 3 different countries, running for president in South Africa, and so much more. And all this activity has led us to this point right here, right now, in July 2017, where we have a very clear vision for a new social structure and a plan of action to take us out of this crazy world of corporate and financial enslavement, and using the tools of enslavement to become the tools of liberation, not doing anything to oppose or harm anyone. So basically we now have a simple plan and a model to create a new social structure without any violence, opposition, or conflict. And we call it the one small town can change the world philosophy. And that's where we are today.
Very, very good idea, I must say. It sounds like a great way to get us off the system and everything, the system of domination and control that we all have to be part of, unfortunately. But the whole thing about getting the Ubuntu really going and started, some skeptics would say, well, this is all easier said than done, because a great many people in the general public on planet Earth are apathetic, which is comprised mostly of the word pathetic, and that means that they will, unfortunately, kind of not be interested in doing this. They'll just sit back on their couches and act like couch potatoes and not really want to do anything. So it sounds like a great idea in practice, but kickstarting the human race and giving them a kick in the pants to make them do this is easier said than done. So how do you intend to solve the couch potato and apathy problem of the human race to inspire them to want to do that, aside from saying the stuff that you did and the plans in action? Do you have any strategies, if that makes sense, to get the human race to really, really want to get involved in this Ubuntu movement, to get us off the system of domination and control and be more free and such?
Yeah, that's exactly what the one small town model does, Andrew. It's all encoded and part of the one small town model. Everything that you've ever imagined possible is possible. And the couch potatoes may remain couch potatoes, but I don't think they're going to remain couch potatoes for very long when they see how their friends that are participating in the community projects, the facelift of their town, their community, the turnaround of their town and community, when that starts to happen, when we implement the strategy in their town, when they see the benefits going to all their friends and they're not getting any benefits, they'll not remain couch potatoes for very long. And that's really important to understand. It's the system, the implementation of our one small town isn't something that I drive as a founder of some crazy, movement with some ideas that still seem a bit crazy to some people. And yet it's something that so many people of us want and resonate with. So it's not driven by me. It's driven by the mayor and the council of the town with support of the people. And that's how it happens. So it's not driven by me. And that's why we believe it's a strategy that can and will work very effectively. And right now, as we speak, we already have 2, possibly 3 mayors of small towns around the world, one in Canada, one in South Africa, and a second one in Canada coming soon, and several in the United States that are already showing interest, and also some in Brazil. So it's really an idea, once the mayors of the towns, who are human beings who actually want to do good for their towns, who want to uplift their towns, who want to do good for themselves and their people, once they get a hold of this, there's no stopping it. And it's not me trying to convince anyone. It's the people that actually take this and they use the plan for their own benefit, for their own turnaround and facelift and upgrade of their own towns and communities. It's very simple. Once you start the process, there is no turning back. And any couch potatoes or fence sitters, as I've been calling them, will get off the fence very, very quickly once they see the benefits coming to all their friends while they still have to work like slaves to get all those same benefits.
I admire your spunk and enthusiasm very much. There's another problem, though, that needs to be addressed in regards to this whole thing. And, well, a lot of people are familiar with the hassle that Nikola Tesla went through when he tried to do the things, the solutions for humanity and all that. One could make the case that if you really, really are successful with what you're doing, the powers that be, who unfortunately are still in power, will come out from their wizards behind the curtain, but they'll come out from behind the curtain and hassle you and everybody else because they see the Ubuntu movement as a threat to their agenda to keep the human race enslaved, and they'll be threatening you and everybody else with threats like, oh, we're going to murder you and your wife and kids if you keep being successful. This Ubuntu movement is that understood, so you better stop doing what you're doing. You seem like the kind of guy that threatening you is not going to make you shut up, and you're not going to give in that easily. But for all the people that help get this Ubuntu movement going, that cower in fear over this, do you have any way of preventing the powers that be from using intimidation and such and fear to prevent this from being successful?
So, you know what I find fascinating, Andrew? You're asking the same questions that thousands of other people have asked when they first discovered the Ubuntu movement and our plan. So it just shows me how equally wired we are to look at the negative things and to highlight the dark things all the time, instead of looking at the positive and manifesting our own reality. And remember that the power of manifestation is a lot more powerful than the power of destruction. And this is things that these are very important lessons that we learn during our lives. I've certainly had to learn that lesson, and I've learned it the hard way, believe me. I'm 57 years old now. If I'd known this 30 years ago or 35 years ago, I would have been a much happier chappie. But I guess that each one of us has a path that we follow, the beautiful path of our lives, our own individual experiences that make us who we are. And the sum of our experiences is what makes us at this particular moment. And you're quite right. I'm not the kind of guy that's going to shut up and fear or cower, because I know that what we're doing is already successful. We've already won this contest, if you want to call it that. We've already won the tussle. We've won the hearts and minds of the people. We've won the energetic contest. There's also a thing called the growth of consciousness and the expansion of the unity consciousness field that is imbued in all of us. All of our hearts and our DNA are filled with the same resonating source of consciousness that is the source of creation, of all creation. And this is unstoppable. Now, this has been awakened in millions of people's hearts and minds already, those that have discovered the Ubuntu movement, our philosophy, and our strategy. So that can no longer be stopped. The implementation of the One Small Town strategy is so brilliant. That's why it didn't happen in 6 months or 2 years or even 5 years or 10 years. It took us 12 years to figure this out. How to beat the system, or how to get out of the system that has enslaved us on every possible level. And that's why it's such a beautiful, elegant, and simple system to use, or a plan of action to use, to get out of this enslavement mentality and enslavement system that we're in. And why it's so beautiful is because we use, as I mentioned, the tools of enslavement as the tools of liberation. And the tools of enslavement are money and the greed of capitalism. Now, this is why it's not going to be stopped by those that you say that, the powers that be, we call them the powers that were, because as you may know or sense or feel, they are very rapidly losing their grip on humanity, and this is why their actions and their behavior are becoming more and more extreme, more and more draconian, because they know and they sense that the people are waking up, the people no longer believe their lies, and they're starting to see through the lies and that have been going on for not just decades or centuries, but for millennia. And people are waking up and realizing that we, the people, are the majority. Those that have been running the show from behind the screen, the Wizard of Oz and all that, they are being exposed, and they know that we are by far in the majority. And when the majority find out how they've been mistreated and misused and abused, I would not like to be one of those wizards hiding behind the screens, because they will be found and discovered. But hopefully that is going to be avoided and we will find the one small town solution very, very soon. As I said, we already have certain small towns that have started the implementation of this. We have all the technology, we have all the healthcare, we have all the energy answers and solutions. Once this starts, it becomes unstoppable. The reason it becomes unstoppable is because our small town will become the most vibrant example of the capitalist and financial models anywhere in the world. In fact, will be spoken about, that small town will be written about, spoken about in the financial and economic media, the newspapers, the magazines, the TV shows will be interviewing the mayor and the heads of the businesses in our little town for the incredible success that they've achieved from a financial perspective and an economic perspective, because that small town will become a hub of creativity, of invention, of innovation in all spheres of life, and the export of those great discoveries and breakthroughs. So the influx of money into that little town will be unimaginable. And the offer that the town makes to potential investors or conscious millionaires who want to make a difference in the world, who believe in the philosophy that we are sharing. There are already many millionaires on standby who want to join us, who want to invest in these small towns. What this one small town platform creates is quite spectacular. It's the most incredible, twisted kind of justification or twisted what you call a justice that one can imagine, where money and greed of capitalism actually destroys capitalism itself by providing the most lucrative investment opportunity available anywhere for any investor. Isn't that a twisted poetic justice? So imagine this. In our small town, when we start setting up our factories, our industry, whether it's growing food and all the different multiple dimensions and activities in growing food and preparing food and packaging of food and storage of food and so forth. That's huge, huge business already for our community. The fact that we provide our own electricity in our own town is the number one key driver of this. But let's just talk about the investment opportunities. If I'm an investor and I want to invest in the dairy of this one small town, that means I have no competition. Everyone in town is on my side. The people of the town are co-owners of the dairy. They're 1/3 shareholders of the dairy. I have free food for my cows from the farmers that grow the free food, not only for the people, but for all the other activities and for export. I have free labor from the people in my town. So me as the investor in the dairy has an absolute guarantee that the dairy is going to be successful with all its spin-offs, the butter, the cream, the cheese, and all the other spin-offs that come from a dairy. So the investment opportunities in our town, our one small town, are the best investment opportunities available anywhere for any investor on earth today. And once this starts to go in one town, it'll happen in many towns across state lines, across borders, and across continents. And no matter how many wizards behind screens try to put this out, it's not going to be possible because you can't put out so many fires. And also, once people in the small towns realize that they've taken control of their own town, their own destiny, and they're now the drivers of the prosperity and the abundance that they're creating for themselves, it becomes unstoppable. They will never be able to go back. And I believe that the consciousness and the consciousness field and the expansions of the consciousness field is with us and is actually guiding us along this, what I call the river of life, and opening the doors to us as we need to have them opened. Because, quite frankly, I could not have come up with this. It's not my idea. It's an idea that comes to me in small bite-sized chunks, and it has come to those that work with me over the last 12 years. And here we are, with the first bunch of mayors putting their hands up, wanting to implement the strategy.
And I believe that you're doing a great job of it. Keep doing it, and it is only going to be more and more successful without question. I want to talk about the issue of money and capitalism for just a moment here. This whole idea of money being a tool of enslavement and how to get off of it. it has been said by a lot of people are very skeptical of the truth value of this, but this whole idea of some sort of a global currency reset, or RV as some call it, is supposed to happen, in which gold-backed currency, which is actually some of value, is supposed to replace the dollar and the other currencies that are phony fiat in nature. And there's said to be like dragon families in China that are behind this. Benevolent ETs are behind this. It's been said, and the whole thing about the dollar still being in power. Someone like me, I've been saying, could we please just crash the damn dollar already so we could get this RV out? I mean, some people say that crashing the dollar would be too much of a shock to the system, because if they did that, America would end up like Zimbabwe and Venezuela, and there'd be chaos and rioting in the streets and all that. Well, I mean, it's easy for me to say crash the dollar already because I got like $2,000 worth of storable food and other things like portable radios and water filters and all that, which would enable me to ride out the storm in the transition period to a gold-backed currency. And as the word on the street goes, that after maybe like 10 to 15 years of working with some sort of a gold-backed currency, we'll eventually be able to transition into no money at all and join all the other civilizations out in the galaxy. Alex Collier has been saying for years, we're the only civilization in the Milky Way that uses money that I know of, and hopefully that could change. And also the capitalism in general. They say capitalism, it has its flaws, but it's better than socialism. Socialism has even more flaws, and communism is the worst of the worst, because like if everybody owns something in society, then nobody owns it, because if everybody owns it, then there's no incentive to take care of it, because those that have just as much experience in taking care of it have as much a say and authority in taking care of it as those that do have experience. And private property, yeah, it may seem selfish, but it always works out better. And I mean, communism and socialism as a philosophy where people can discipline themselves to live off their needs, well, that's good and all if you can do that as a personal philosophy. Jesus Christ was a communist, they say, but as a social system, it fails, and capitalism is better. But it has its flaws. You seem to highlight those flaws, and you want to try to get rid of those flaws. And one of those flaws, the whole fiat currency and switching to gold-backed currency. Have you been following this whole thing about switching to a gold-backed currency? Do you see it happening, and do you believe that if we were to do it, it would be a terrible like shock to the system and all that, to just maybe switch to it entirely and crash the dollar entirely? And that's why they're doing it in such a slow manner, and those of us like me who are kind of impatient, we have to be impatient as a result of it. So what do you have to say about this gold-backed currency reset thing and the flaws of capitalism?
Well, Andrew, many people have brought this up over the years, and anyone that keeps talking about this, any kind of currency, whether it's gold-backed currency or fiat currency, still has not really come to terms and comprehending this thing called money. Doesn't matter what kind of money you have, whether it's gold-backed, whether it's fiat currency. It's about those who control the currency. So when people start talking about this, it means they haven't really thought it through, or they don't really understand it or comprehend the implications of this thing called money and why this concept of money was created. The concept of money was created for one reason only, as a tool of enslavement. It is not about the money or how much money you have or what it backs it or whatever. It's a tool of enslavement. So as long as we have any kind of money, whether it's gold-backed currency or fiat currency or even bitcoins, to go as far as that, because that might be an interim solution, but ultimately it's going to become a problem, because he who controls the gold will rule the roost. And this is why we need to get away from the system completely. So any kind of talk of crashing the economy or replacing this or currency reset or whatever, they haven't really grasped the full system of enslavement. And this is why I always urge people to read the Ubuntu book, to really come to a deeper comprehension of what is really going on. And you will realize how simple it is to get out of it. And let me tell this once again, and I keep saying it, I'm starting to sound like a stuck record and possibly quite arrogant to some people that have never heard of me or heard of the Ubuntu movement, have never heard of the one small town strategy. Let me put it to you this way and be very, very clear about this. The one small town strategy is the solution for every single problem we have as the human race. And it starts at the lowest level, the bottom level, from the people, by the people, of the people, with the people. And from there it grows and builds upwards and it expands. So it builds the strong foundations that we need, that are not shakeable, that are unshakable or cannot be distorted or corrupted or infiltrated by anyone, because they've been built from the ground up, from the right philosophy. They are not something that's created top down by a government of the people that is actually the slave master of the people, with a hidden agenda somewhere, or someone that controls the gold-backed currency from some invisible office somewhere. So the One Small Town strategy is so simple. It is a self-correcting system that's created by the people for their own needs. It creates the technology they need. It feeds and creates and funds everything they need. And it is unstoppable. And this will grow in thousands and eventually millions of towns, and eventually realize that we don't need central government. Central governments will simply they'll just dissolve as more and more small towns take control of their own prosperity and abundance, and they have so much that they can export and eventually share that abundance with others, not exchange, barter, or trade. Share, so that every community becomes this insatiable community of creation and abundance, and the system as we know today will simply fade away. The factories will close down. The mines that are destroying our world will close down. New technology, new materials, new ways of doing things will be created and invented on a daily, weekly, monthly, annual basis by the brilliant minds, the inventors, the engineers, the healers, the scientists in our towns and communities, because those are the people that create the inventions in any case. But in the system that we find ourselves in today, all the things that we as the human race creates is controlled and owned by either corporations or governments. It never comes down as a benefit to the people. And we're reversing this completely, turning it on its head, so that whatever we as the people create belongs to the people and benefits to the people, and not some invisible government office somewhere that then uses it as a tool to control the people, or some corporation that uses the people as their slaves to benefit financially, that keeps them in a position of control. So let me say it again, and those that have been studying the One Small Town model will know what I'm talking about. The One Small Town strategy is the solution for every single problem we have, and a very simple, elegant, and achievable way of making this a reality.
Right, and the idea of having a government in this society, the reason government was created, the one and only reason, was to exert by any force to protect the rights and property of everyone under the auspices of that government. Simply put, if an individual or a group cannot protect themselves and their rights and their property from some malevolent force that's trying to conquer them, then the purpose of government was to form a collective force to vanquish those who pose a threat to the individual or group in that society who cannot take care of themselves. And natural law and common sense would say that you can't delegate an authority that you do not have to your representatives. So whatever authority the government has is entirely dependent on whatever authority we as individuals and the general public have. Collective authority of a group cannot exceed the authority of any individual member of that group. Consequently, no free man has any authority over another free individual or group, free meaning not bound by the terms of a contract. And that, well, common sense also says that if you do not cause harm or intend to cause harm to another person or property through negligence or deliberate intent, then nobody has authority to punish you and stop you and prevent you from doing what you're doing in your free time and such. That's not causing harm. And governments are supposed to acknowledge that, but our governments have usurped that to a great extent. Now, the question is do you support the idea of having a government in a society? And if you do, what can we do to make sure that the government acts like they understand that they cannot have more authority than we have, and their one and only purpose is to exert by any force to protect the rights and property of everyone under the auspices of that government?
Okay, first of all, in the Ubuntu contributionism system, there is no ownership of property. And as all native people of the world will tell you, and all the Native American chiefs will tell you, that the concept of earning or owning a piece of the world or piece of the earth is an insane idea. To say that this piece of the earth belongs to me, and if you set your foot on this place, then you're trespassing. So because we're just passengers through this, and we spend so little time here on this earth. So the concept of ownership of property is an insane idea that was created by those who created money. Remember, this all goes back to the first creation and the appearance of the first royal bloodlines on earth, when the first royal priest kings suddenly appeared, miraculously out of the blue, appear on earth some 6,000 or 8,000 years ago. It's very difficult to put an exact time to it. And suddenly these first kings and priest kings that make the first royal bloodlines, suddenly they own all the land, they own all the world, they own all the land, and they take everyone hostage under their authority. And so the concept of property ownership is an insane idea that was created and suddenly appeared at the same time that money was created by these first priest kings, the ownership of property and the creation of money, and the temples being the first banks, and so forth. So in the Ubuntu philosophy, you don't need to own land because everything you need is provided for. And if you grow food, and if you're drawn to growing food and whatever, then you're provided by your community with as much land as you need to grow as much food necessary for that community. You don't need to have 10,000 acres of food that lie idle. We use whatever land we use, and the rest we leave for nature. And the same philosophy applies to everything. If we need to build a factory to create new materials, when we, for example, take graphene and mix graphene with hemp or silica or anything else to create new materials that we don't need to mine the world for, because we have all the materials and the technology and the know-how to make incredible, non-toxic, biodegradable, reusable materials for everything imaginable. We don't need to mine the world. The reason we mine the world is because of corporations that use it for profit and control. The moment that incentive leaves, we no longer need to have the mines. And if you watch the One Small Town video, it shows you how quickly the mines and the big corporations that are destroying the world, how quickly they will close down and fade from our memory once we impose or start to implement the One Small Town strategy. It's a natural, simple growth of the One Small Town strategy, where new technology, new innovation that's brought in by the people and the brilliant minds of our communities, and not just one community, many communities, individual communities that are following the same principles. Once we start sharing those brilliant inventions and innovations, how quickly the existing system fades from our memory and just dies off. So that's important to keep in mind. Is that the concept of land ownership is something that will vanish very, very quickly as everything is provided and created, and everything changes the moment we start succeeding in the One Small Town model. And I forgot what the other part of your question was. The one was the land ownership and government.
Yeah, obviously
the
government.
Idea of government.
Is it a good idea to have a government? Yeah.
Yeah. So what you'll find when you look at the One Small Town strategy and the model and the plan of implementation, one of the critical aspects of it is the appointment of what I call a council of elders, and it's really just a reference because the word elders is in there, and wisdom and patience and integrity and honor is associated with someone who's looked up as we look to as an elder, someone who has integrity, that is honest, that's truthful, that shares wisdom and knowledge with those that look up to that elder in our community. And that's what used to be the case. The elders in society used to pass down the knowledge that they learned from their elders. And this is how oral tradition, oral knowledge has been passed down for thousands of years, that we cannot kill and destroy by burning books and burning artifacts and clay tablets and so forth. That oral tradition and knowledge is irremovable. That is been held and cherished and treasured and passed down with great care by shamans, by medicine men, and by knowledge keepers and wisdom keepers over thousands of years. And this is why we have a lot of oral tradition and knowledge still alive today that tell us how things used to be. And even though the current Eurocentric system, since it invaded the free world some 500 years ago, when the Spaniards and the Portuguese first invaded the free world and invaded the native tribes of the world, they tried everything to remove the knowledge of those native people they found. And in essence, what they started doing in those days is they basically initiated the creation of a species with amnesia by removing people from their ancestors. If you remove people from their ancestors and the knowledge of the ancestors has been passed down for thousands of years, you create a species with amnesia, pretty much what we have today. We don't know who we are, where we come from, and why we're here. And suddenly we have a problem on our hands, and people behave like zombies, and you can tell them and manipulate them any way you want. And so what happens with the one small town is that the implementation of the Council of Elders is a very simple ancient tradition where we appoint 12 people and a 13th one as the spokesperson for that Council of Elders. These are the most wisest and most trusted and respected people of our community, and they are the guardians for the community of anyone or any group abusing or manipulating the community for their own benefit. But at the same time, when you have a community in which everything is provided, that you have everything you need, you have food, you have the furniture made for you by the artisans that make the furniture, you live in a house that has been designed for you by those who love to design homes and built by those who love to do building, and you have technology by those who love to create the technology, and healthcare by those who love to do healthcare. If you have everything you need, how could you possibly corrupt that system? What can I offer you that you don't already have? Can you see this becomes a problem to anyone who works in the capitalist model? So the moment you remove money as a tool of control in that community, you remove any possibility of people manipulating the system for their own benefit, because there's nothing you can offer me I don't already have. In fact, everything I have is custom made and is better than anyone could ever provide me in a capitalist model. So no way will I try and jeopardize that to go back to a capitalist model that some extrinsic forces controls my moves and controls and dictates to me what I can and cannot have. So the idea of a government very quickly fades away, while what will most likely happen, I'm not saying this is what's going to happen, but what will most likely happen as the central governments lose their control and power over these communities, because these communities will become financially incredibly wealthy. And money today controls everything. So this is why I said that the financial success of our little town will become the protection at the same time, while we still have this global financial control that manipulates people. Because the people in our town will have everything for free. They will live for free. They won't need to use money. So they'll realize very quickly that money does nothing and people do everything. We're the ones that do everything. We create and invent and build everything. And yet we're making all this money that comes into our town, and we share that money with everyone. So everyone in our town is a millionaire or a billionaire, and yet we've got nothing to spend the money on. And this is going to happen in many other small towns, which means that the power of the central government will very quickly disappear, and the central government will simply fade away. The armies that they might want to use to change this will not act against these people, because these people in these towns are their mothers, their fathers, their brothers and sisters. And I'm not going to go and shoot my mother because she's become a very successful industrialist in a one small town. So you see how we take the tools of enslavement and use them as tools of liberation. And it becomes very difficult to oppose this kind of rise and rapid success of these small towns. So what will most likely happen is that the council of elders in each town that keep the balance and the stability of the town, the council of elders will then have a central council of elders where the different elders will come together and discuss the successes and the needs and the shortcomings of the different towns, and decide, well, last year this town here had a shortage of bananas. Let's make sure that next year we make sure that they have enough bananas. Or the nail clippers weren't distributed last year to this part of the country, so let's make sure that the nail clippers make it to that part of the country. Can you see how simple the solutions become?
Yes, another thing government related. What about a court system? Do you need some sort of a court system to act as a neutral arbiter? And courts are supposed to be a neutral arbiter. I must stress that. If in the
Yes.
event that something in society does not like there's some sort of a disagreement, do you have like a court system in place to like settle the dispute and fix that?
Yeah, again, let me make it very clear right up front. This is not my system. This is a system that's created by the people for themselves. And the same applies to the court and the legal system within that community, within the one small town community. Obviously, people should know by now that the current justice or the legal system we have is not a legal or a justice system for the people. It's a justice and a legal system for corporations. And attached to it is a little bit of so-called imaginary justice for people. But most of the time, people do not get any kind of justice. And the entire world, the capitalist world, is driven by the control and management of the injustice that happens because of people's misery and desperation to survive. So the system that we're in is the cause of the misery and the crime and the dysfunctionality of our system, of our world. The moment we change that, if you live in a world, in a beautiful world where everything is available to you, the best possible medical treatment, the cure for all disease. If you chop your arm off or you lose a liver, you can regrow it. This technology exists. People should know this by now. All this stuff is hidden from us. Well, in our one small towns, we're going to have this. So when you live in a community where all of this stuff is available, where you have everything you need, what levels of crime do you think will we experience? Clearly, the crime as we know it today in a capitalist model will virtually vanish overnight. So our legal system and the justice system in our towns will have very different kind of situations to deal with. And once again, it'll be up to the people of that community to set up their own justice and legal system, and the Council of Elders will most likely be at the heart of that, to decide how to deal with certain things getting out of control. You know, like what if somebody rapes somebody? I don't know. Crimes of passion and crimes of insanity are often what comes up. Well, if you can't solve crimes of passion and crimes of insanity. Well, my argument is yes, you can. Because crimes of insanity is a disease. And if we can cure disease, we can cure crimes of insanity. And crimes of passion today are a consequence of the society that people grow up in and are nurtured in. And most of us are bloody sociopaths. Most of us grow up closet psychopaths because of the system that that's imposed on us, which includes the education system, by the way. So, for 12 years of our lives, we spend being treated like machines, and basically it destroys our natural abilities. It compartmentalizes us into age groups and into subject groups and teaches us the fear of authority and to respect and obey authority without any question, and to believe that everything in the world and in life is compartmentalized and broken down into different segments and departments that you have to work in. Well, that's not how things work in nature. So the moment you grow up in a society like we are creating, we're not proposing, as I said, we are already creating this new reality. The moment we start to live in these kind of absolute free societies where everything is available, the education system has changed completely. The training and what you choose to do is changed completely. What you do, what you love to do, what you contribute to your community while you have everything available to you is very different to what happens today. Everything changes. Everything changes. Where you live, what work you do, where you work, what hobbies you have, how you find your partner in life, how do you cohabitate, how you have children, the food we eat, how we grow the food, how organic the food is, how we prepare the food. Will we still cook food at home, or will we have restaurateurs and chefs who love to cook for us in community kitchens where we eat the most incredible food imaginable? How we heal ourselves. Everything changes. What transport we use. Are we going to use petrol-driven engines in our society? Of course not. So everything changes the moment we implement this model. So the way we behave, the way we grow up, and the well-balanced individuals we become in this free society is very different to the kind of trauma that is imposed on our people today that causes us to go out and commit crimes. So the whole thing about crime and the justice system is a very interesting subject, and I believe we'll be surprised to see the true human nature come shining through the moment you give people true freedom and true liberty to express their natural talents so that they feel like they are worthy human beings and worthy participants in this thing called life.
Thank you. And regarding an education system, a little debate as to how this can work. The whole public school system is flawed in the sense that what last stuff they teach you is useless garbage. A lot of it is outright lies. But in regards to do children need to have some sort of an education, and if so, is a classroom environment the way to go? And if a classroom environment is the way to go, how do you determine what kind of subjects are supposed to be taught in the classroom if the ones that are being taught are garbage? I mean, some people have actually said, forget the classroom system, children should be out playing with their friends and being one with nature. Well, that's nice and all, but going out with your friends and playing all the time is kind of going to keep you in the dark about how things work in the real world. So maybe having a classroom system, some sort of a classroom system, is not such a bad idea. Well, how do you propose we go about educating children? If they're not supposed to be outside playing all the time, how do you plan to educate them?
Well, the education system is critical, because if we don't change the education system and implement something very dramatically different, we're going to just keep repeating the same problems we have today, and feeding the world with young adults that have been destroyed, that have been brainwashed and lobotomized to a large extent, and by the current education system, and wondering what the hell to do in life. And as you know, most young people today have very little prospect of success in anything. So it's really important for us to change the education system as soon as possible, because otherwise we're just repeating the same problems. So let's deal with that. So the most important thing is that, as you mentioned, the current education system most people aren't aware of where our current education system comes from, why it is what it is today. And again, much of this information is in the Ubuntu book, which I recommend people read to get a greater perspective on what's really going on. The current education system is created by the bankers, the banking families that control the corporations of the world. They've created this education system. The Rockefellers, the Carnegies are mostly involved behind this, and most of the other banking families that fund the universities, fund the research laboratories, and fund the textbooks that go into the schools and the universities. So everything we are taught at school and at university and most educational institutions is a pre-planned system to create a future obedient labor force. Now, obviously, we're going to change that, because in the Ubuntu communities, in the contributionist society, we're not worried about a labor force, because we are doing everything together collectively, using our individual skills and then our collective manpower to do whatever it is we choose to do for ourselves. So the obedient labor force flies out the window. So what do we need? We need knowledge. We need information. So to start learning about life, about soil, about earth, about water, about how to grow food, about the true laws of nature, about sacred geometry, and how sound manifests and affects everything. The true knowledge and learning that we are devoid of and deprived of in our current education system. This is how I see the new education system going. Learning skills, learning true skills for life, anything imaginable. So whatever master teachers, master craftsmen we have in our communities, whether it's food growers or carpenters or sculptors or musicians or rocket scientists or engineers, whatever master craftsmen we have, those master craftsmen will automatically become the master teachers of that particular craft, and will pass on their knowledge and the mastery to the younger people coming through. And people and children, as they grow, are naturally drawn towards certain things, and we must encourage them to then go and explore whatever they are drawn to. And for 2 years of my life, I might be drawn to music, and the next 2 years of my life might be drawn to carpentry or building bridges or whatever it is. As you grow older, the things that attract you or that you're attracted to change. And this is what we need to encourage, so that by the time our children are 16 years old in our communities, they will know more, they'll have more knowledge, they'll be able to bake bread, build bridges, make a levitation device, they'll know everything possibly imaginable, they'll have far more knowledge and practical experience, more than all the bloody university professors in the world combined today.
Thank you, thank you. Another issue I want to talk about that was raised in the UBUNTU videos I saw, the whole subject of immigration. This is a very touchy subject in the present day regarding what's going on with it and how the best ways are to solve it. There's no question. There's definitely a conspiracy going on regarding keeping the borders wide open of countries and flooding the countries with unvetted illegal immigrants, particularly of a Muslim variety, who are Muslim refugees who believe in really far-out radical things like raping people and all that. Well, there's definitely a conspiracy to do that, to destabilize the countries, Cloward and Piven style. But as far as a solution goes, a little bit of a debate about this. There are some ultra-libertarians out there who would assert that immigration should not be treated as a privilege. It should be treated as a right, and that people deserve to have the right to cross international borders without any government permission, no paperwork filing. There's no reason to get a passport. There's no reason to vet anyone, and people sailing into like ports and all that, international ports from the international sea borders. They shouldn't have to go through like an Ellis Island type process to come into a country. However, there are many out there, the majority anyway, seem to believe that immigration needs to be treated as a privilege and not a right. The people of a nation do have the right to secure their border. They have the right to keep the borders protected, secure, and everything. And consequently, they also have the right to ask their representatives in government to do a vetting process on anyone or anything that attempts to cross the borders, therefore requiring everybody to get passports to cross international borders is, they would assert, definitely in the best interest of society. Now, some people say, well, the passport system we have is flawed in many ways. It would be better to abolish that, and I have had people on my show talk about this, some sort of a global citizen type passport that could be used as a replacement passport. Although the people that push this, they recommend, if you get a global citizen passport, do not throw away your original passport, because if you do and you come to the border, your global citizen passport is not going to be recognized as legitimate. So it's better to have the old passports that the national governments enact, and hopefully the plan is, over the course of time, we can phase those out and instead use the global citizen passports, or maybe even, dare I say it, no passports at all. And however, like what I just said about shutting down borders and leaving the borders wide open, that's only good in a perfect world where everybody gets along, and we don't live in a perfect world. Not all borders are created equal. Alex Jones of InfoWars, he's really big on the idea of making sure the borders are secure. And one person I remember called into his show and asked, well, when does the right to liberty, right to travel, right to locomotion make it legal to cross international borders without government permission or paperwork filing? And Alex Jones's response was, well, there's got to be a process. I may be a libertarian, but I'm not a suicidal libertarian. Not all borders are created equal. The border between Mexico and America is much, much more hazardous than the border between Canada and America. And Alex Jones was like, it's not like we're bordering Switzerland. I mean, when he was talking about the Mexican-American border, there are hazards and concerns to be worked about. It's not a utopia. So what I saw in your UBUNTU video, you seem to suggest that you want immigration to be a right and not a privilege, but many who would hear that would say, Michael Tellinger, you are a suicidal libertarian. So how do you plan on dealing with the immigration issue, and do you want it to be a right, and how do you expect to do that without society falling apart from open borders?
Okay. First of all, I have a lot of Muslim friends, and so if we're going to have Muslim people listening to it, I have a lot of Muslim friends, and I must tell you that not a single one of my Muslim friends has got any violent thoughts or ideas of going out raping people. That's like saying Christians want to go out and rape people, or Jews want to go out and rape people. And in fact, that's what the Bible actually suggests happened in ancient times. We've moved beyond that, and anyone that thinks that borders and passports are a solution are completely naive and have not yet really internalized the source of the problem. Borders, passports, border control, all the stuff are a consequence of the corporate structure and the global corporate elite that have divided people. Divide and conquer is the principle of rule, and they've done this very, very successfully. Listening to you talk about the border between Mexico and the USA, it just makes me realize how brainwashed most Americans have become about the sort of the freedom of the United States and the land of the free and the brave and all that kind of stuff, which is just, it's an American brainwashing utopian disease. And it's, I know a lot of Americans that understand and really get this, because from the outside, it's not the American dream. It's a global dream. Everybody wants to be free. Everybody wants to have a beautiful life. It's not just Americans. So it's really important to get us across. And if people believe that setting up borders and having passports and more strict and more control is a solution, then they still live in La La Land. Once again, let's go back to what I said earlier. The one small town is a solution for all our problems, and that includes the necessity for having borders or the necessity for having passports. All of that stuff fades away very, very quickly, because in a world and in a community and communities that border each other or are on different continents, if you live in a community where everything is available, where you're a contributing partner to the community with everyone else in your town, your village, your community, you have no needs or wants that you cannot satisfy. You can express your creative talents and God-given talents or acquired skills. You can express them to your best potential or capacity. What could you possibly want more than that? So if everyone is happy and I want to move to another community, I just leave what I've got. I don't need to take anything. And I've sketched this scenario many times in the past before. I just go to another community and I arrive there and I say, hi, my name is Michael. I come from Waterval-Boven, South Africa, and I'd love to come and live on the coast of California. And I've chosen your community because I love the fact that you participate in water sport, and I would love to come and live here in your community for a while because I love to, be more closer to the ocean. And the answer is, welcome, Michael. Welcome to our community. What skills do you have, et cetera, et cetera. Fantastic. Now choose a place to live, and you just slot into that community, and you are welcomed with open arms as somebody who has come to contribute to that community and to expand on the experience and inject more talent and more creativity and make that community a better place, because that's how it works. This is why the one small town system is a solution for all our problems. And all this thing about border control and passports fade away very, very quickly.
I admire your optimism. A lot of people will agree to disagree, but hey, that's their opinion. I'd like to switch gears now, talk about ancient civilizations and how our history books need to be rewritten. Currently reading Eric von Daniken's book, History is Wrong. I've read most of his books before then. I also mentioned when I spoke to you yesterday, I've read Zachariah Sitchin's first 3 books, and you've done presentations explaining how Sitchin deserves a lot more credit than mainstream scientists and mainstream historians give him. Excuse me. I want to take a couple minutes here. I'll try to make this as quick as possible to explain how I can confirm that Zachariah Sitchin is very accurate. He does deserve a lot more credit than people give him. There was an interview where Andrew Bartzis, an Akashic Records reader, did with Lance White back in 2013, where Lance White said, I want to get the Anunnaki creation story straightened out. what's the deal about Zachariah Sitchin's theories and all that? And Andrew Bartz has said Zachariah Sitchin's first three books, in terms of the events, are extremely accurate. His timelines are a bit off, but in terms of the events, he's very, very accurate. A couple things that he was flawed about: the Anunnaki did not come to Earth on a mission; they were actually lured to Earth. Bartz asserts by a higher dimensional malevolent entity that was controlling the Middle East region of planet Earth at the time, and the gold that they were mining, it was not to shield the atmosphere of their planet Nibiru. It was actually to use as some sort of well, first of all, monatomic gold is one thing, but it was also used to lure entities into some sort of a consciousness machine. I'm not going to get into detail about this. People can check out the interview with Bartzis, but Andrew Bartzis did assert, yeah, the Anunnaki, they do exist. There is a planet, Nibiru, although I want to point out that Mark Kimmel, ET contactee, did point out at a recent conference that the Anunnaki's planet of Nibiru did self-destruct. Make of that whatever you will, but it did exist, and, well, maybe it does exist, maybe he's wrong, I don't know, but, and the Anunnaki are like a third-dimensional race of giant humans and all that. Now, when I heard Bartz say that Sitchin was very accurate, I was caught off guard, because I remember hearing a lot of people, well, not a lot, but a few people say that Sitchin was a fraud. Among others, Leo Zagami, former 33rd degree Freemason, said in a Project Camelot interview he did back in the day that Sitchin was a disinfo agent who worked for the Vatican, and his job was to support the Zionist cause, the Vatican's cause, and all that by spreading lies and all that about human history. And Arizona Wilder, a former Illuminati mind control slave, she spoke to David Icke in David Icke's Revelations of a Goddess documentary in 1998. She actually said that she saw Zachariah Sitchin at satanic Illuminati ceremonies. She even said he was a shape-shifting reptilian alien, and his job was to disinform humanity about the reptilians and the Illuminati. And David Icke said, well, that might explain why Sitchin warned me not to talk about reptilian aliens when I asked him, well, why did you not include anything about a reptilian or a serpent race in any of your Earth Chronicles books? He said Sitchin leaned across the table and warned, like, hey, don't go there. That alien stuff about reptilian and serpent aliens, it's not worth researching. So, well, I asked Andrew Bartzis about this when I met Andrew Bartzis at a conference in Sarasota, Florida back in October 2013. Told him all the stuff I just told you now, and Andrew Bartzis told me, now take a deep breath, we're going to jump off into the deep end here. He told me that Leo Zagami and Arizona Wilder, they were under some sort of a strange form of timeline manipulation, mind control, in which entities known as timeline watchers would screw around with their spiritual and physical bodies to make them put them on some sort of an alternate timeline where they perceive events differently, and that made them believe that Zachariah Sitchin was a fraud when in fact he was not. I wish the world wasn't this complicated, but hey, if Andrew Bartz says it, then the Akashic records say it, and if the Akashic records say it, then it must be true. So that, I assert, is how I know that Sitchin, it was first three books anyway, are extremely accurate. They definitely deserve to be read, and now that revolutionizes the way we look at the human race, the missing link between man and humans, because it does say, yeah, humans, modern day humans, were created by gene splicing, Homo erectus and Anunnaki DNA. Yeah, there is, or maybe there was a planet Nibiru in our solar system and all that. And some people say, well, how could the Anunnaki survive on a planet like Nibiru when it's so far from the sun? Well, a couple of things. John Lear, in my interview with him, he said that planets, they actually have their own consciousness filtering system, where the stars, which are not nuclear fusion, but are like scalar energy and electromagnetic, they transfer energy to the planets, and the planet's filtering system converts some things into all the energy into a sustainable life source. So, and it doesn't matter where the planet is in the solar system, even if it's far away like Nibiru is, life can still exist. And Tolek, when I interviewed him, the Andromeda Council ET contactee, he asserted that Nibiru has its own interior energy source, which Sitchin did actually talk about in his books. Said Nibiru did have some sort of an internal energy system, and that did in many ways allow for life to exist on Nibiru, and it did have its own shield on the planet as well. And Bartzis did say that Nibiru's consciousness drive is different than Earth's consciousness drive. Now, I've babbled long enough. I've gone really off into the deep end here, but hey, the important thing is here, I'm trying to validate Sitchin and validate your work as well in your presentations. He does deserve a lot of credit. So I've babbled enough. Do you have any comments about this, and why do you believe, in your mind, that people need to research Sitchin's work a little bit more?
Well, I leave people to make up their own conclusions. I think what you've said is very valid and important, that you share your views on this, and I believe many people will share your views on this as well. Zecharia Sitchin shared some critical information with the world, and he helped to open up and awaken millions and millions of people who were fast asleep. I guess I was one of them. I was 30 years old when I first read Zecharia Sitchin, and it completely rocked my world. And it was about a decade after I first read, when I was 19, when I first read Eric von Daniken's Chariots of the Gods, and that was the first book that really, opened me up to all this other off-world activity and other world activity. I think Sitchin will be remembered forever for having contributed critical information. How accurate it may have been, how the timelines have been distorted, that's not really important anymore. What happens into the future is what matters, how we take that knowledge and information and how we use it. I believe that my contribution to what Sitchin has shared with us is that I've provided in my books, which is Adam's Calendar and Temples of the African Gods, I've provided the physical evidence of what Zecharia Sitchin has written about in great detail. And that physical evidence is the millions and millions of stone ruins scattered throughout southern Africa that were part of the ancient gold mining activity here, the ancient gold mines and the tools, the advanced technology used by the Anunnaki, and this vast gold mining civilization that has just been abandoned and left covered by soil and sand. And so I've in 2007 and 8 first started sharing the discovery of this vanished civilization, which is the physical evidence of what Zecharia Sitchin was writing about. So, and there's also a lot of connection with ancient African shamanic tradition, shamanic knowledge, the handing down of ancient knowledge and tradition and wisdom, and of this connection to the Sumerians, the Sumerian gods and the creators of the human race. And Adam's Calendar, which is the name that I gave it, is known as Inzalo Yelanga, or birthplace of the sun. It's one of the most important ancient sites on Earth. It's could be called the South African Stonehenge, although it's not a Stonehenge. It's just an ancient calendar that was originally a circular stone structure. It's badly damaged and destroyed, and yet it gives off huge amounts of energy, sound frequencies beyond 300 gigahertz, and very powerful electromagnetic fields that create a very powerful toroidal field around the site. This is not something I imagine or I think. I know this because we've measured it with very sophisticated electronic tools, and this site, known as Inzalo Yelanga, is some sort of a vortex, a time vortex, or a transport vortex, or an energy device. Who knows what the hell it was used for, but it is connected to Great Zimbabwe and the Great Pyramid of Giza. It's on exactly the same 31 degrees east longitudinal line. So clearly there was an ancient connection. So as I said, my contribution to this knowledge pool is the expose of this vanished civilization of very, very high knowledge and technology. I've also shown the stone tools that they use, the cone-shaped tools, and the toroidal stones, the Torus stones, which are very powerful energy-generating devices, which are in essence, actually, if you look at my latest presentations that I've just done in the USA and Canada, it goes to the source code of understanding everything in creation. The toroidal fields, toroidal shapes that really go into the 0 point, or the morphogenetic field, into the vacuum, as Nassim Haramein calls it, out of which everything manifests in the physical. So this is the science and the leading edge of science that we deal with. When we look at the ancient past and the ancient human history, we uncover things that we least expected. Advanced ancient technology that works with silica, with quartz and stone, because it's the most abundant element on Earth other than water. And they used stone for everything, because it is not only a tool but also advanced technology. And also by studying this ancient stuff is where I discovered and realized that money was introduced as a tool of enslavement, And there was a time while humanity was completely enslaved, and then for many thousands of years after they were given their freedom from their enslavement, it seems, and that could have been affected by the flood, and then the later enslavement of the people again for control. There was a long period of time where humanity lived and existed without money. They formed communities where they lived and worked together, looked after each other, and created abundance. And those communities were then destroyed by the imposition of the first royal bloodlines, by most likely the Anunnaki themselves, when they felt they were losing control, or the remnants of the Anunnaki, or who knows. But that's when we see the sudden appearance of the royal bloodlines that just came and hijacked the world from beautiful sentient human beings that were on a path of evolution of consciousness and becoming beautiful, evolved souls and spirits, conscious beings, reconnecting with their source code and reconnecting with a creator, if you want to call it that, and realizing how everything fits together. It's a beautiful story and beautiful journey of discovery.
Yes, and also wanted to, since I mentioned the thing about David Icke being warned by Sitchin not to discuss reptilian aliens in his work, it goes without saying, though, that maybe this was a little bit of an oversight on Sitchin's part. He had his own reasons for why he may not have wanted to talk about it, but it has been asserted by many in the like the ET contactee community and such, that there was actually an alliance back in ancient times between the Anunnaki and the reptilian aliens that David Icke has glorified. And the term Anunnaki, some people use that to describe the reptilian aliens. Well, it should be used to describe the race of human-like giant ETs from Nibiru, but because they allegedly made an alliance, it has been also used to describe the work of the describe the reptilian aliens as well. And hey, I understand you don't really want to talk about like the bad guys because you don't want to give them power, but do you I just got to ask you anyway, do you think maybe it was maybe a bit of an oversight on Sitchin's part to not include this in the history books, and it would be maybe a good idea to try to, just for the sake of rewriting the history books anyway, to maybe combine the work of David Icke and Zecharia Sitchin to describe who our ET controllers were in the past?
Well, Andrew, you've just done it, so well done.
So I guess you agree with me.
What else do I need to say? You've just done it. So I think people that explore, that research, do their own exploration, expand their own minds, break down the boundaries of their own belief systems, those are the people that make new discoveries. And I'm a firm believer in that, never ever creating any boundaries and taking what you learn and hear from people, as far-fetched as it may seem or sound at the time. A year down the road, suddenly that might seem and sound a lot more sane than what you believed before. And that's certainly been my experience and my journey. I now know absolutely, and I have no doubt in my mind that everything I've been told and taught is a lie by the current system. There are obviously golden threads. They're golden little threads, like, yes, John went to the shop. That's a truth. But why he went to the shop, what he may have bought, where he left, that's where all the lies are. So yes, the history books may be filled with little golden thread truths, but everything that surrounds us is this never-ending bloody ocean of lies, and that's incredible about our history, about our creation, about the cosmos, about the universe, about energy, about everything, about science, physics, everything we held dear. We need to let go and start again. And this is really the latest research that I've been doing. The presentations deal with this kind of notion very deeply, and I'll present a whole new way of looking at our reality, nature of our reality, learn from the brilliant minds, the Nikola Teslas, those that have brought to the world innovation that has been destroyed and removed from society. People like Tesla, like John Keely, like Edley Skulden, like Royal Rife, and many others that have, and I'm just talking about the last 150 years. There are thousands of years of brilliant minds and inventors and souls that have used their creativity to try and enhance the human experience that have been destroyed and removed from our society. But the time is now. I believe that those were all that was the journey that we had to walk to get to this point in time where we take back our sovereignty, that we truly become free human beings with the potential to rise to the highest levels of consciousness and realize that we are all one. We all come from the same source. The frequency of creation, the source code creation resonates in all of our DNA equally. And it's at that level that we're all connected, and we start seeing the connections of everything around us in universe, how everything is connected through vibration, resonance, and frequency, and how when we understand that and really embrace that, everything is explained so much easier than it was ever explained before.
Right. Looking at the symbol for Ubuntu for just a moment here, since we're on the subject of Sitchin and such, can't help but notice that the Ubuntu symbol seems to bear a striking resemblance to the winged disc figure that Zecharia Sitchin asserted in his books is a symbol of Nibiru. And interesting about that, some would beg to differ with that. David Icke, for one, in his book The Perception Deception, which I did read in its entirety, he asserted that big penny drop for him, he says, was discovering that many of the things that he and others thought was sun symbolism is actually Saturn symbolism. And I believe in his book he actually asserted that the winged disc, he would say, well, Sitchin is wrong about that. The winged disc is actually a symbol for Saturn, and the wings represent the wings represent the rings of Saturn. The thing I want to stress, though, is David Icke, like I said, he's been duped into believing that Zecharia Sitchin was a fraud, as I mentioned earlier with Arizona Wilder, and in his book, The Perception Deception, he actually asserted Zecharia Sitchin he said Sitchin was a Zionist. I don't know, he didn't cite his research for that, but he said Sitchin being a Zionist would have known, he said, but the connections between the letter X and the planet Saturn, and he asserts that Saturn is the real planet X, planet of the crossing and not Nibiru, and that's where he bases his research on the idea that the winged disc represents Saturn. So we got a little bit of a debate going on here. What is the winged disc? I'm going to guess you are more inclined to believe that Sitchin's the one who's accurate about this, and I believe that too, because I stress David Icke was duped into believing Sitchin was a fraud. But did you actually intend for the Ubuntu symbol to represent the winged disc that Sitchin asserts represents Nibiru?
No, not at all. When I created that logo or that symbol, I realized that logos and symbols have great power and create imagination and drive imagination and work at a deep subconscious level. And I just wanted to show a world that is in ascension, global ascension, rising of consciousness. And if you read what it says unity and higher consciousness for all, or for a new world, unity and higher consciousness for a new world. And so it was really just to indicate a world united, rising in consciousness. That's what the logo means. Today, I have a much deeper comprehension of the incredible power of logos, symbols, rock carvings, rock paintings. And in fact, I go into great detail in my latest presentations on how the frequencies that are emitted by logos and carvings and symbols like the caduceus and the etc., how the frequencies of a flower of life, what it actually sounds like, and how those frequencies actually sound frequencies that come out of those logos, and how they affect our thinking, and how you can manipulate people without them realizing it with the logos and symbols. This is a huge subject that probably requires another discussion altogether. But this is why on my book cover, the Ubuntu Contributionism book, I went to a great deal of trouble and research to design the cover that represents balance, harmony, coherence, resonance, and unity. That's what the Ubuntu book cover represents. The equilateral triangle in a circle represents absolute balance and harmony and unity on all levels, and it represents the balance between the inner and the outer world and all that stuff. So these are big subjects that most people are very ignorant of, and it's all part of the growth and expansion of our knowledge pool.
Thank you very much. All right, it's 5 minutes till 10:30 here on the East Coast, so I guess we'll bring this to a close. But before we do, you can take these last 5 minutes, get out anything you'd like to get out, and also your websites, contact info, how people can reach you. I'm sure you get a lot of emails and such. There were actually a couple times in the past couple years where I actually did try to contact you through email to be a guest on the show, and there was that automatic generated response, but after that you didn't respond to me. I'm sure that's not your fault and all that. You probably get bombarded with a lot of messages, so I can't hold anything against you for that, but hey, it's great that I was able to get you on now, and I believe this was a fascinating interview to say the least. So those that want to reach out to you and get a hold of you, your sites, your contact info, anything else you want to get out, you got 5 minutes. Go ahead.
All right, Andrew, thanks very much. It was great chatting to you. Thank you for the opportunity to share some of my research and insight and the vision and the plan for a beautiful new world of abundance and prosperity, the Ubuntu contributionism strategy. Remember, please go out. I encourage people to go out and do as much research, read as many books, keep an open mind. Do not ever close your mind to any new ideas or any new philosophies that you hear, because then you are creating the own boundaries and you're putting yourself into a prison. What I'd like to say is that take all the information from the past, and when you start opening that Pandora's box or going through that door into that rabbit hole of this information of the past and what's happened to humanity and to our world, and the horrible dark stuff is just overwhelmingly nauseating. Keep in mind and use that as a platform of knowledge and information. Don't let it get you down. Don't let it make you pathetic or believe that there is no way out. Remember, we are the makers of our own reality. These are the most important things you can remind yourself of every day. We are the makers of our own reality, and it's that capacity that we have been deprived of and stripped of through everything that we are exposed to, from the TV channels, the education system, to everything, the Hollywood. Everything has prevented us from being the creators of our own reality. So use this knowledge of the past to make you realize of what we should be doing into the future. And this is what we've done with the Ubuntu movement. We've created a simple plan of action that cannot be reversed. Once it starts, it is impossible to reverse it unless you pretty much wipe out everyone on this planet of ours. So learn as much as you can about the Ubuntu model. Get the Ubuntu book. Watch the Ubuntu One Small Town Can Change the World video. Share it with everyone and become a seed of consciousness in your area. Start spreading the good news. Let's start spreading only good news and a positive, beautiful vision of a beautiful future of prosperity and abundance for everyone. That's what I wish for all of your listeners and everyone that ever comes across this recording. Let's co-create this beautiful world that we would all love to live in. It is up to us to make it work and make it a reality. We have already begun. We're not just talking about it. We have already begun. My websites are ubuntuplanet.org, ubuntuplanet.org, and also michaeltellinger.com. And you should find all the information on there. Otherwise, also go to onesmalltown.org to get a quick, or go to YouTube and just put in One Small Town and watch a few of the videos associated with it. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and I hope this interview is or this chat is going to inspire a lot of people to do the right thing into the future.
I sure hope the same. All right, good luck, Michael, on your future endeavors. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your trek to infinite consciousness. Maybe I'll see you at some future event or something. Namaste, my friend. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Andrew. Stay well, my friend.
Stay well.